Good morning, my creative friends. This is Painting in Your PJs live with Minette. I am Minette, Dr. Minette Riordan. I live in beautiful Loveland, Colorado, where I am very inspired by the colors and the nature that is all around me. And I believe deeply in the benefits of creative expression as one of the most powerful tools for self-discovery and personal growth. And one of my clients recently gave me some amazing feedback about how so much of my work is really about going deep with people, but that I do it in a way that's fun and playful and doesn't come with this always with the intensity or the gravitas of a lot of personal growth programs. And I think that's because as we move into our 50s, 60s, and our 70s, what we see and notice is that life isn't so serious. We have a lot more wisdom. We have a lot more curiosity. We have done a lot of our work already, and yet we know there is still more to do. And I find that our creative practice is something that can really support and sustain us. It becomes a form of radical self-care as we grow into, through, and beyond whatever your definition of midlife is, second act of life, third quarter. There's so many different names for it. Good morning, Leslie, my friend. Great to see you here. And over the next couple of months, I am taking on a very personal project and using the accountability of you here watching with me to really dive into curating my own style of folk art expression in my personal painting. You can see, good morning, good morning. You can see my big Wonder Bear, as Brad has called him, starting to take shape and form here in the background. I worked on him a little bit on Tuesday, but I really want to dive in to what does it mean to explore our style? Because one of the things that I hear people say all the time is I'm trying to find my voice. And what does it mean to find your voice creatively in the world? Well, let me tell you, when you find your voice on the page, on the canvas, on the fabric, you can also then have more confidence in finding your voice and asking for what you want and need in other areas of your life. So I never see my creative practice as something that's separate from me. It's not just a hobby, and it's a beloved hobby, but it's also a consistent spiritual, personal growth, self-discovery process. And I make art every single day. And that wasn't always true, but it has changed my life more than I can possibly tell you over the last decade to commit to a consistent creative practice. And like many of you, I'm all over the map. I love to do all the things. I love bookmaking, and I love intuitive collage, and I love painting. I love painting big. I like painting small. I love art journaling and mixed media. So I have all of these interests. And there's this fun new thing right now in some of my business communities where you can ask ChatGPT, which is a AI tool, to roast your Instagram account. And mine was pretty darn funny, and it's all over the map. There's not a lot of consistency there. We are so much alike, Lisa. I cannot wait to meet you in person, my friend. We are definitely soul sisters. And so I want to take on this very personal challenge, almost like a version of the 100-Day Project. I am fascinated by folk art, by what folk art is, by how it's cultivated. It's often done by artists who are self-taught. It's usually very expressive of the location that someone lives in. It's simplistic, very two-dimensional, not intended to be realistic. There are a lot of really famous folk artists, and every single culture around the world has its own version of folk art. So my personal question is, what's mine? What's my folk art voice? What's my color palette? Which is what I'm going to play with today. So I'm going to encourage you guys to play along, maybe flip through some of your journals or the work that you've done over the last couple of years and notice those color palettes that you're drawn to. And as I dive deeper into my own creative practice, studying more about color theory and composition and design, things start to get a little bit better. But I love having a focus. I don't want that focus to last too long because I'll get bored. So we'll see how long the folk art playtime lasts. But I'm going to go ahead and change over my camera here. So I have been having so much fun playing with artificial intelligence as inspiration for art and painting. And I often will start with an image and then move on from there. So you saw my bear painting in the background. So I mushed together a bunch of different designs from a tool called Midjourney, which is my favorite creative tool to play with, and have completely morphed that into something that's my own, inspired by AI. So using these same prompts, I went and played with folk art animals. And the cool thing and the weird thing about artificial intelligence is that you get some really weird looking things a lot of time, like these gigantic eyeballs on these characters. So by using the same prompt, it's interesting, this sort of chosen color palette. Hi, Karen. The palette that AI and my prompt dedicated towards these things. So they're all very similar in colors. Oh, I have a beautiful owl, and I think I took the owl. This was one of the bears that came up when I was working on ideas for my big painting. And you can see how in all of these there's some similar colors. And the colors are a little scattered, maybe not as cohesive as I'd like them to be. I know I am having so much fun. And my husband and I had so much fun with Midjourney. I have a whole nother series. These were just the first ones I created. So I want to really focus on Colorado animals, Colorado scenery, Colorado wildlife. I'm so inspired by the area where I live. And my next retreat, Midjourney is an app, yes, offered through Discord, or I think they finally have their own app now, Midjourney, so you can use it on your browser. You couldn't before, but you can now. Midjourney is a AI app for design. And you have to be mindful when you're using artificial intelligence, because sometimes it'll create something that has an artist signature on it. Well, that's not original. Sometimes if I'm going to use the image as is, I might do a Google search of the image to make sure it's not just pulled from somebody else's art. And my intention is not to recreate these exactly, but simply to use them as inspiration for curating my own style. And so I'm very mindful as an artist of both the joys and benefits of artificial intelligence and the pitfalls of how they pull from a lot of different artist styles. So again, this is about using these as visual inspiration and really starting to make them my own. I do love this horse, so maybe I'm going to start with this horse. And I'm looking at this palette, and it's a little bit all over the map, right? So I signed up for a painting membership with an artist named Ali Kay, Alikay. I love her style and look. It's not folk art inspired, and it's really hard. It has stretched me so much as an artist. I didn't expect the way she does her strokes and everything to get the look to be so challenging, but it has been very, very challenging for sure. It's really stretched me. Yeah, her stuff is really, really fun. She's an amazing teacher. I'm going to use this for my palette. But one of the things that I took away was that she loves fluid acrylics, and she recommends and uses all golden fluid acrylics. She has a signature collection of specific colors that she uses. And I'm like, I don't want to go buy a whole bunch of Goldens for a course if I don't know that I'm going to love the colors or love the palette or loved the course or any of that. Of course, I loved all of it. But so I thought, let me try some of the Liquitex Basics acrylic fluid paints. These are relatively new to the Liquitex brand, I'm sure in an effort to compete with Golden. I also love, I'm just out of a lot of the Nova color paints. And I've seen they're doing a lot more marketing. They also have a fluid acrylic. They started out designing paints for muralists, but I've been nicely surprised by these Liquitex basic acrylics. They're pigment rich. I like the flow of them. And I'm going to work with these instead of a more medium or heavy body acrylic paint, because with the way that I work, I want the surface of the painting to be relatively flat, not have a lot of texture, because my favorite thing is to get the colors down and then to come in with the paint markers over the top and add a lot of designs and lines and marks and things over the top. So in order to think about curating our own palette, what you want to think about first are those primary colors plus maybe a black and a white. So I'm going to start here with this is a phthalo blue, my favorite yellow, which is a cad yellow medium. And I had never used this one before. I learned about this one from Ali K. This is a pyrrole red light. I use pyrrole red all the time. It's a very orangey red. So primaries, right? And from these primary colors, I can really mix any other color. Ali K has a green in hers, but today I'm going to stick with my primaries. I've also got my absolute favorite teal blue. You can tell I've got paint all over this, how loved this one is. This is a golden paint. So I'm also curious about the difference in the paints. I have a Hansa Yellow Opaque. What I love about this one, I also learned about this one from Ali K, so giving her credit for this one. It's an opaque yellow as opposed to this cad yellow, which is much more transparent. And what's happening here? It was a lot of yellow. And then instead of a red, I have quinacridone magenta. If you have followed me for a long time, this is one of my most favorite palettes is the teal blue, the quinacridone magenta, and a yellow, because you can make amazing greens and purples, very different. You can see even looking at the palette, the darkness of these and the brightness of these. And so my goal today is to play with colors and start to see what's my palette, what's my color voice that I want to express, because I love really bright colors. And then I also have some white that I think I need to, did I open this? I need to open this as a brand new thing, the Liquitex Fluid White. It's a really nice opaque white. So love the white. And then I also have a Payne's Gray. This is a very blue Payne's Gray. Payne's Gray can help you make some really nice deep dark colors. Notice that there's no black in here at the moment. I'm learning to create my own darks. And what's missing probably is some phthalo green. I really love a phthalo blue green or green blue shade, and it's over on the other table. So we're going to make our own greens today and see where we can get to. But Payne's Gray can be a nice way to deepen some colors. So I'm going to play with this palette for a little while and see where I get to. And why does this matter? And I'm actually going to take notes today as well, because I want to see and remember the things that I mix and what it is that I love, right? And so I'm going to start with just getting the actual colors down on the page. I am going to need a rag for drying. When I work with acrylics, again, you've heard me say this before, I want to work with a very dry brush. Look how beautiful that phthalo blue is. That's a gorgeous, gorgeous blue. as I played with blues and learned about colors, I actually really love a phthalo blue more than people's favorites, ultramarine blue. You'll notice when you go to buy paints, this is that pyrrole red light. You can see it's really kind of orangey. That especially watercolor paints and definitely some higher quality acrylic paints, the blues are very expensive. It's because the pigments to create the blues are expensive. So there's our beautiful quinacridone magenta. I don't know how true the colors are on screen, but hopefully it'll give you a little bit of an idea. And I could do this in a color wheel format, but I don't know. Other people love making color wheels. I get really bored making color wheels. So I'm just going to do swatches instead. And then here's that beautiful teal as well. So these are the 6 colors that I'm working with, plus white and Payne's gray. So I am going to start, I'm going to maybe get a smaller brush and we're going to do some just smaller quantities of things. Do have some fun with a little bit of color mixing and swatching things out. What I want you to remember when you're mixing anything with yellow, and this is not going to be enough yellow, you're going to start with a lot of yellow and the tiniest little bit of either the blue or the red, because these colors will completely overwhelm your yellow. So I'm going to take just the tiniest, you can't even see that little bit on here, and see what color greens we can mix. So this is a lot of yellow and a tiny bit of that phthalo blue, and we get almost a beautiful sap green. Then I can continue to darken that green and get a lot of different shades of green just by how much yellow versus blue we can include. And this is what I'm looking to create. And all of these colors that you're looking at, these are the same way that I created the colors for the big bear painting behind me. And I will at some point go back and write down the colors. I actually love that color. And when we look at, for example, our horse, and we want to start to create some variation in our tones and our colors, we're seeing a lot of different greens in here, greens that have a lot of yellow, greens that have a lot of blue. So we want to kind of just start to lean into that. One of my favorite courses that I ever taught, and if you're in any of my programs, you've probably either taken it or gotten it for free as a gift in our email list, is our color-coded emotions course. So when I'm thinking about curating a color palette, I'm also thinking a lot about, let's see if we can go one shade darker, about how do these colors make me feel? Are they expressing the emotion? So for me, art is not a lot of variation in that one. So for me, art is all about visual storytelling, right? It's all about what's the mood, the feeling, the expression that I want to share and create here. So we're getting more into, that's very close to a phthalo green blue shade. Now what happens if I add a little bit of red to my greens over here? If I'm careful not to add too much, we're going to change that tone and bring some of those colors back. So you can see with just these couple of colors, and if I keep going, eventually I'll get a gorgeous brown. Still a nice dark, almost, you know, like an army green. But with these 3 colors, now we get almost into those blacks, right? So I'm already really enjoying this palette and the greens that it creates. What I can tell you is that with this palette, I don't like the purples, and I love the oranges, right? So next, if I come over here, again, I'm going to start with a little bit of that red, the red, and the tiny, tiny little bit of that blue. We get this kind of burnt orange happening. And we think that blue and red create purple. But what I'm getting here, that's almost a burgundy. And I start to see which of these combinations make my heart happy. And as someone who paints a lot of nature scenes, I'm looking for all those landscapey colors, right? With some pops of bright. So if I just keep mixing and playing, I never actually get to a purple here. It's kind of fascinating. And it's just because of the quantity of yellow and the quantity of green that are in these blues. Look at that beautiful, there's my black, right? That dark, you can't see that at all. There we go. I've got an almost black there, which is really beautiful and makes me super, super happy. So is this interesting to you guys to see something like this in the process? Is it boring, right? I actually am going to start on a painting this morning, but I want to encourage you to think about doing this for yourself, looking at the colors that you have, playing with color mixing, asking yourself, when I think about color and emotion, how do these colors make me feel? Are they making my heart happy? So there's just the tiniest bit of red. We just warm that up just a little bit. Do you ever give yourself permission to sit and play with your paint? Because a lot of people think, oh, I can't possibly I can't waste paint. But it's not about wasting paint. It's about learning how to find your voice. So rather than painting with colors right out of a tube, you're creating this very custom color palette, right? Custom color palette. And I want you to look at the numerous colors that I'm able to create already here with 3 colors of paint, right? With 3 colors of paint. So that yellow very quickly disappeared into that red. Now what happens if I come over here and I add a little bit of that blue? We're going to start to get some different, really beautiful sepia tones. Start to sort of recreate some burnt umber, raw sienna, some of those really, really earthy colors. So I'm loving those 3 colors a lot. And they definitely have a tone and a feel to them that's unique. Now, I did not do any shades or tones, which means I did not add white or black to these colors, but that's another version of the experiment that we can do, right, is by coming back in, and if we take some white and a little bit of our blue, look at that gorgeous sky blue there. And then we just continue to brighten that up, almost a turquoise. If I added now a little bit of yellow to this, and you can see I'm playing with very small amounts of paint. A little more of that white. Then we can come back and we actually can create our own turquoise without having to purchase a turquoise right out of the tube, right? So this actually saves you money in the long run because you become very clear about what your palette is and the colors that you love to work with, and you buy those colors and you buy good quality paints in those colors. All right, so let's come over here. Let me turn this around and get some white paper going. And I want to come back now to my quinacridone magenta, my Hansa yellow, opaque, and my teal blue. These are all golden paints, not that it really makes any difference, but I'm noticing they're a little more flowy and fluidy side by side to those Liquitex fluids, but they all are drying with this nice flat, little bit matte. So I'm going to take some of that Hansa yellow. I'm going to come in with the tiniest little bit of that quinacridone, and we're going to start to mix some really beautiful, look at that, sort of a goldenrod. We're going to add a little bit more. And this palette I think I love because we can get really bright colors. And so let's see if I can make this show. So I want you to look at that orange versus this orange with the pyrrole red light. If we put them side by side, we have a brighter orange and a much warmer orange. So I love all of those, right? But they definitely, there is some difference there. Keeping your brush dry. Again, I don't, and clean. I don't want my dirty paint water to influence the palette. And I can keep going with that quinacridone and that yellow to create a lot of oranges. Now we're going to come in with that yellow and some of that blue. And this creates some of those bright limey greens. Love! That color makes me so happy. We could not get that color with the other yellow and the other blue, right? So this is a color green that is unique to this particular palette. Warm it up just a little bit, a little more blue, and then what happens if I come in with a tiny bit, maybe a tiny bit more of that quinacridone magenta, and we can warm up and start to get into some of those sagey greens. So my greens here are looking very different than the greens here. Like, notice how different the colors are. So I'm loving all of these colors, but if I were working on, one painting, I'm going to either want to use all 6 or maybe 4 of them, right? I don't want to use all the colors. I want my palette to be pretty cohesive. All right, so I am going to come over here with that teal, a tiny bit of the quinacridone. It's the darker color. And we're going to get to start to make some really beautiful purples. This one almost looks a little bit on the gray side. It's kind of a nice warm blue color. More magenta. We start to get a little more purple. And a lot more purple. Remember, with that other palette, I was never even able to create a purple. I just ended up with browns, with beautiful browns. But we can actually create quite a few different shades of purple with those two colors. Now, if I wanted to darken this color up, what happens if I bring in a little bit of that phthalo blue? We'll create more of a violet purple. And this is how we're going to start to darken our purples up. I could also add a little bit of Payne's gray here. Not a lot of shift there. But so much fun. Ooh, and that one might be my favorite purple so far. So just these very subtle variations. When we start to work with subtle variations of color, we start to add depth and nuance to our paintings. We start to understand how to build up layers of colors. With acrylics, we work dark to light. So the more we build those colors up, the more depth that we can create in our art and our painting. And then I just had something in my head that I wanted to do. What was I going to do? Oh, I was going to add some white over here. So if we add some white, we'll start to get some really pretty lavender tones. So imagine if you were painting a lavender flower, if you've ever looked up close at a stalk of lavender, it has quite a few shades of purple in a stalk of lavender. So you can see how different these palettes look with these different colors. And I love them all, and they convey different moods, right? They convey different moods. All right. I think that's good for the color mixing. So what this is helping me see here as I am looking at all of this is that I pretty much have my 6 primaries. Now I could continue to experiment and do this yellow with this red, this yellow with this blue, right? This blue with this magenta. So I have a lot of flexibility with this palette, but I love that right now I've got 8 colors in front of me, and that's all I need. The one I might add to this palette inspired by, and I will come back and write names on these and keep this to maybe play some more. But I would come back and definitely add the phthalo green. Forgot my thought. Add the phthalo green. So I have always loved to paint on wood panels. So the other reason that I fell in love with Ali Kay's class was that she paints exclusively on wood panels on masonite. So these are inexpensive 8x8 squares of, it looks pretty much like masonite. I think they're the Arteza Art Alternatives brand. Can't even tell you where I got these. I've had them for years. I moved them from California. I also have a ton of scrap wood from my friend Rebecca, who's a beautiful woodworker, and have been painting on a bunch of scrap wood as well. And I realize I'm almost through all of that. And the other thing is I love the toothy texture of it. They do need to be gessoed first. So I did gesso that before class. And I'm going to start like I always do, and I want to get the shape of the horse down onto the page. I'm not going to worry so much right now about some of the other details, but I just want to capture the basic shape of the horse. And the other thing I loved about Ali Kay, this has ended up being, a bit of a plug for her. So she's a phenomenal teacher. So I've been using this method of tracing shapes onto canvas for years. And she does the same process. And she's so great about, don't feel guilty about tracing. Let's see, picture isn't quite 8x8. So she's like, I want to get to the painting part as fast as possible, and I don't want to futz around with the drawing part. So she creates templates for all of her paintings before she starts. And I love that it sort of echoed what, I already believed to be true. All right, that's going to go up off the edge. So we're going to start over the next number of sessions. We're going to practice this tracing style, but she gives you permission, and she talks about how it's not cheating. It's about getting to the fun part faster and about being able to more effectively capture the right shapes of things. His eye is, or her eye, this is definitely a girly horse, is probably, I don't even think I put a little. And yeah, we're going to just do that for a second. And I'm going to start with some background colors and some background layers. A quick reminder, if you're popping in today, I am out of town next week, and so I will not be here at all next week. The following week, I will be here on the Tuesday only, and then I'm speaking at a conference the end of that week, and then the rest of September will be normal. All right, so I think what I want to do is I'm going to come in and I'm just going to outline my horse just so that I have the shapes. Now, because I am painting in a sort of primitive folk art style, we're really looking at capturing shape and pattern and element. It's less about shadow and light sources. It's about playful visual energy, right? And you can see where there's definitely some light areas, some brights in here. They've kind of some funny little lines around the outline of the horse. So there's some few spots where they've definitely, as if the light is shining directly at the horse. But other than that, the horse is flat. It doesn't have a lot of dimension, which actually makes it kind of easy and simpler to paint, and it's what also gives it that kind of unique folk art style. And again, my goal with this series, one is to practice working small. I love working large, but it takes a lot of time and energy to finish those, and I don't know that it gives me that opportunity to practice as much as I would like. So with this one, the intention here is to do a whole bunch of small paintings and really just practice. Practice my style, practice the color palette, so that as I do 20 of these over the next little bit, or however many that I get done, that I am going to just put a little bit of color in the background. I will start to learn what it is that I love, what are the habits that I have, what are my areas and opportunities for growth. I'm just washing some color, some undercolor here. Again, a trick I learned from Ali that helps create a lot of depth. It's watered down quite a bit. I don't need this to be super opaque. And I kind of like the white of the horse, but clearly it needs more white, and I'm thinking maybe even some yellow. Maybe we'll go for a yellow horse. Thank you. It's going to come together. And again, we're just, whew. So that is a very lemony yellow. I'm like, that is not the yellow I wanted. So I'm going to go back and add some of the cad yellow. I want more of that sort of warm goldenrod. Okay, that's better. And I might come back over this with even more white, but I want to just start to get some of those undercolors. And I wasn't quite organized enough, but when I come back, I'm probably going to have 2 or 3 of these that I want to work on all at the same time, because this one can be drying while I'm working on the next one. So we're just chunking down that color. So one of the things about taking other people's painting classes or watching processes, like watching Ali Kay's process, right, is I want to watch and see what can I take for my own, what's going to contribute to my own style. because I don't want to paint like Allie, right? I want to just learn from her. So there is our very first layer of paint. And I think I might start to come in and draw in some of the lines of the background and start to put some of the darker colors in the background. And then we'll have to let it dry. It's so hard to manage. I either have a very bright surface and that paint is shiny. So it's super simple. This is what I absolutely love about folk art is the simplicity. There's no complex drawing, complex shapes. They're very playful. And I think because play is one of my values, that it feels important to have a visual creative style that mimics my own attitude of playfulness, right? My own desire to have my practice be both sacred and playful, and to not see all of those things as unique and separate. All right, so I'm going to look back at my palette. I'm going to get some of those dark darks in the background and the foreground. And way back over here, I was mixing the pyrrole red light and that phthalo blue, and I got this really almost like a midnight blue when you see it up close. So I'm going to see if I can recreate that a little bit, which was this color up here, which is now probably pretty dry. And again, at this point, I'm still working in pretty thin layers of paint because we have a lot of layers to go to start to really build up the color on the background and the texture on the background. And that yellow is looking kind of icky against the blue, right? Right now, actually blue and orange are complementary colors. It's one of my favorite color combos are blue and orange. This is a big brush to get in around him there, or her. So I also am just sort of noticing and being mindful of, okay, the color of the horse is gonna needs to become a lot more orange. And we actually don't see the body of the horse down here. He's got all kinds of flowers in front of him. And I'm really happy with my palette. I can't tell you that there's some just joyfulness at the moment with sort of having decided on a palette, a simple curated palette of colors. So I'm just coming in and kind of putting in some of those landscape lines. Again, not being really too fussy about any of this. I'm just sort of blocking in some color areas. This one actually can come a little bit further down here. And we've got these. So this is where when you're going from AI to your own, it's like there's some awkwardness, right? Like this flower sticks up and there's kind of a line here and we're not sure what's horse and what's flowers. So I want to make sure that those landscape lines are a little more consistent. So this one makes me think of zentangle and the practice of drawing behind, right? So this one is behind the horse, but then we also have a bit of a horizon line that we're going to put kind of in front of the horse as well, so that eventually it looks like our sweet horse is standing in a meadow of flowers that are all in the foreground, and everything else becomes background. So again, just being mindful, right? Adding a little bit of that teal over here, get a little lighter gray blue. We're going to come in with some of that light around our horse. Still pretty dark though, right? I'm not ready to start to brighten this up. And this is good practice for me where I was feeling challenged and even a little bit frustrated with learning Allie's way of creating. This is allowing me to see how I can take what I've learned and make it into something that is completely my own. So again, I mean, it looks like a kid's drawing at the moment, but that is really what so much of folk art is, that sort of, naive, childlike, playful, simple. We lost a little bit of bring some of those darks back. And you will see, I will just kind of work dark to light. But this is just the very beginning of sort of patching things in, and all of a sudden I'm kind of in the little bit of that icky middle part, right? Of, where do I go from here? The yellow is not quite right, so and it's funny, it's warmer when I look at it with my eye, and it's a much more lemon yellow on the screen. And the horse is going to have a variety of colors, so it's fine for now, but I'm going to probably want to put some white over the top of that to bring some of those colors back in. And before I go any further with this, it needs to be completely dry, and then we'll start to layer our colors. So one of the things you'll learn when you're starting to build up your lights and your darks, I'm going to come in and draw the mane in here, is that one of the keys to not having muddy paintings is to make sure that you allow your layers to get nice and dry. So just noticing where it's almost like a zentangle string, noticing, how there's different places and patterns, and some of the angles of these different shapes are what is going to give that horse just a little bit more dimension. And I see that I kind of lost his chin here, so I'm going to bring that back. And we're going to maybe work on that eye a little bit more. And then this got a little bit squared there, but also our horse has a bit of a little blaze on his nose or her nose. So when I was growing up, I had a horse named Blackie. He was all black. He had 3 white stockings and a beautiful white stripe on his nose, and I've had a fondness for horses ever since. There's a little bit of a shadow under his neck right here. And when I look at this, the way that I will approach something like this is I'm going to put solid patches of color here and here and here, and then I will come back with my paint markers and add a lot of the detail to the horse. I won't do that with paint. I have a lot more control with the Posca markers. Also, I'm going to want to get the right colors into all of the different background places. And again, I don't know that I will be this precise or fussy with the detail. We'll see, but I will want to figure out a way to get all of these beautiful flowers in there, thinking I might simplify the backgrounds. One of the things that I'm noticing about these different pieces is how much is going on in the backgrounds of each of them, and I get to decide how much of that I want to include. So for me, I don't really love that part at the top. I love all of this down here. So maybe this becomes a crescent moon and we just have some stars up here. So we start to look at something inspiration like this. This bird just cracks me up. Another idea that I want to share with you, and then I'm going to be complete for today and let the horse dry, is that when you have an image like this, whether it's an image from a magazine, a photograph that you personally painted and printed out, you can print it out on maybe some cardstock or watercolor paper if you have your own printer at home, and paint right over the top of this to get a sense of the shapes and the colors. What do you want to change? What I love about this bird is the playfulness of the tail and the wings, right? I love the little wispy feathers. Don't like the giant eyes. So I notice, what do I like? This one feels very red and orange. I might want it to be more pink and have a lot more green. So I'm looking at these through that lens. Last night I took my owl and I put the owl on watercolor paper. I forgot to bring it down this morning. And I started using colored pencils to color the owl, again to play with the palette and the colors, right? So at the moment, I got to go get ready for my 8 o'clock here. And of course, I never want to stop painting. I'm going to go ahead and come in. Excuse me. So I started with the magenta instead of with the yellow, so I'm getting a very dark orange. But we're going to start to put in some under layers of color in these different places. These different shades of orange. And because I'm painting over the top of the yellow, it lends a certain cast, right? We have an underglow here that we want to pay attention to. I'm going to get some of that over here. We're going to just start to layer in some of these different colors. I'm excited for the progress as well. And it's interesting that the background of it is lavender. So we're going to take a little bit of that make that beautiful purple that we made before. We're going to start to layer in these colors. And the thing is that all these colors will continue to change as we add layers and pattern. I don't always have all the color choices that I want in the paint markers, right? So sometimes that has an influence. Let me get some more base color down on those ears. I'm not sure what I'm going to do with that mane yet. And where that painting has perhaps way more different colors than I want, I might simplify the palette some, right? Okay, his nose is going to need some work, but we're just start to put some of those colors down. Loving this violet color that is there. Again, this is all still just that underpainting. Yeah, like that violet more than that lavender, but we'll let those just kind of mix on the surface there. And then these same colors that are going on the horse are also the colors that ultimately need to end up in the flowers, right? I don't want 15 or 30 different colors. So the colors of the horse are going to be mirrored in the colors of the palette. Definitely going to bring the white back instead of the yellow and see where we get. But that is it for today, beginnings, right? So much of this is going to be about process and beginnings as well as getting things finished. So I am stuck right now in that messy, messy middle and excited to see where we go next. I will see you guys a week from Tuesday. Happy Labor Day to those of you in the United States and Canada. Hope you enjoy a lovely long weekend, and hope you enjoyed this conversation around color and emotion and curating a palette that brings joy to us and also helps convey the story that we want to tell in our art. Bye, everybody. I'll see you soon.